Good day guys, this is Practiphile and today we're gonna take a look at a DAP here. It's from FiiO, it's the JM21. You've probably heard about it. It's one of the budget DAPs out there that FiiO just released. When it was released, it was sold out. I think these are currently priced less than $200, around $170. So when it comes to price to performance, we're gonna find out if the JM21 really is a market disruptor. I want to thank FiiO for sending this over. I am going to give my honest impression on this one here. What's in the box is pretty simple. You get the DAP, the screen protector, the charger, some manuals, that's it. It's pretty straightforward. I'm pretty sure they're also cutting costs just to make this DAP really affordable. I'm gonna go straight to the point on this review, so you can skip ahead. I'm gonna be talking about the different specs and the battery life and everything that I was able to find during my testing. So let's start first with the internal specs. So this one's pretty light. I think it's around maybe 156 grams. I mean, it's really light on the hand as well. This is also running Android 13. I think they're using Snapdragon 680 with a 3 gigabytes of RAM and 32 gigabytes of ROM. I think that is enough space for the Android software to be installed. You can expand the micro SD card slot to 2 terabytes. It has Wi-Fi, it supports AirPlay. It has a 4.7-inch display, which I think is enough for its size, really. I don't really think it's too small. I also don't think that it is too big in my hand. I just think it's just enough for the size. For the Bluetooth, it supports AAC, SBC, the basic ones, aptX, LDAC. The battery capacity is 2,400 mAh. With their testing, they're saying that for single-ended, it can run up to 12.5 or around 12 hours of battery life and 9 hours for the balance. This one here is running the Cirrus Logic 43198, 2 of them, and I've reviewed some of that DAC chip. Actually, it's pretty popular now, starting with the Snowy Night. There is a SimGot, Dooth 4X, and there's also the EPZ TP35. There's just a lot of dongles using that DAC chip recently. The on-U key, just a lot. And one thing that is very common with that DAC chip, and like in every company, in every implementation, is it's just really smooth sounding. You don't really notice any boosts in any frequency. It's not too boomy in the bass. It's also not too forward in the treble. It's just a nice chip in general. So yeah, that's all for the internals of this one here. We are now going to move on to the external side. But on this side here, you get the power button and then the volume buttons up and down. And on the other side, you get the 3 buttons here: forward, back, play in the middle, SD card slot here at the side, and you have the 3.5 on the bottom and the balance as well. So that's pretty straightforward. You also have the Type-C charging on the bottom, so really well built. Like, it feels really solid. On the externals, this one is made of aluminum alloy plus plastic. It's really light compared to my M3X, which is, yeah, I think this one's lighter. This one's lighter, definitely. It almost feels like cheap plastic, but it's also well built at the same time. So there you go. On the app, on the device itself, I think they have pre-installed, so it's basically just Android. You know, like, you must be using Android phones. It's basically like a phone. You get the settings here. The user interface is really familiar because basically it's Android 13, but they installed some system apps here, like the applications, technical support, the Enter Sleep, which is like a lock screen, and of course the FiiO app music player. They've also installed some Google stuff like the Play Store, Google Chrome, stuff like that. So I think bloatware wise, you don't really get a lot of bloatware in here. So since it's running Android 13, you're gonna have the gestures. So you can choose, either you're gonna choose the 3 buttons on the bottom or gestures. So it's really up to you which you prefer for the navigation. I was really excited on the Android 13 because I really want to use my DAP in my car. Newer cars, they're removing the aux input, and so of course you can use Bluetooth, and I can use my phone to play music in there, but sometimes I just want to use a different device for that. But my M3X does not support Android Auto because it's Android 7. So when I got this one here, I got really excited to try it out, and use Android Auto. However, I don't think the Android Auto works because Android Auto has to be installed in the system. When I got this one here, I had to install Android Auto through Play Store, but it doesn't really work like that. So I guess there are more technicalities to that. I mean, I could root this. I did rooting before, but I don't want to risk it because, you know, I'm still gonna review this one here. So I didn't root it. I sent a feedback to FiiO regarding Android Auto if they're able to add that in future updates. But for now, you can use Bluetooth and use this as a source when you use it in your car. But yeah, Android Auto does not work in here. I'm not sure with other DAPs like from Hybe or iBasso. I'm not sure if the Android Auto works there or the newer Shanling devices, but hopefully though they'll have an update to have it work. So real life usage, it's pretty much, again, as I mentioned, the interface is very, very familiar. You can customize it whatever you want, and of course you go to about device, tap the build number, and you're a developer. I mean, if you're familiar with tinkering those settings as a developer or getting the developer options, you can do that. Pretty straightforward Android 13. Now let's move on to audio related settings here. So you get 3 different gains. You have low gain, medium gain, and high gain. You also have line out for the 3.5. You also have line out for the 4.4, which is my Shanling M3X does not have that setting. You have different filters. You have fast roll off filter, slow roll off, minimum phase, linear phase, slow roll off, linear phase. So you can choose different filters. Is there any sound difference? Maybe a little bit. It's really questionable, but you can play around with the filters. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it with the audio related settings. Oh, and you also have here the mode. So you can try the Android mode, which is this one here. You can use pure music mode, which then puts this one here into the FiiO exclusive player. You're not running different backgrounds or applications in the background. It's just a FiiO music player. So technically or theoretically, this should save some battery because you're not using different apps. You also have the AirPlay for Apple. You have the USB DAC mode, wherein you can use this as a DAC. So for example, if I attach this to my PC, I can use this one here as a DAC. Basically, I can use this one as a dongle. It's like a bigger dongle. And also as a Bluetooth receiving device. So I can connect this to my phone, and my phone is a source. For example, I play Amazon Music or Apple. I'm gonna attach my earphones here and play it, and it should be able to get at least a better quality. But this has Wi-Fi, so if I'm at home and I'm just streaming, I can we use the Wi-Fi. Otherwise, like if you're outside, because this doesn't have a cellular signal that way, then yeah, if you don't have any offline files, then probably you would want to use your phone as a source for music and transfer it, and this one here becomes a Bluetooth receiver. Now moving on to the battery life, this one here has 2400 mAh, right? I don't really have much to compare. I only have my Shanling M3X, which has maybe 3200 mAh of capacity. I would say it is pretty decent in a way that I'm comparing it to just any other Android devices, like a phone, for example. With your phone, probably you're gonna charge it like once a day, probably 2 days at most. It's gonna be the same here. You would probably think that this would last longer just because it doesn't have any SIM card. You don't connect it to a network or something. I mean, this is me comparing with my Shanling M3X, okay? Like this one here, like I lose 1% in like 2 days just idling, which is crazy, right? This one here, I feel like I lose maybe 1% every 2 hours. At first, I was losing 1% every hour, but I did cycling, so I drained the battery and then charge it full for like 3 cycles, and now I think I'm losing lesser than maybe 1% in an hour. So you can also use the battery saver option from Android, because you know Androids have the battery saver option if you want to use that. I did notice some difference with the battery drain when I turned the battery saver on, but yeah, I'd say it's pretty decent. It's not really the best, but it's also not the worst. I've experienced probably worse. I think it was a Hybe, like their high-end DAP, wherein like it drained in 8 hours, and I wasn't even using it. With my test case here, I tried playing like for overnight. Probably it used most of the battery overnight. The 12 hours might be pretty close, and I don't think it would go further than that, like with continuous playback. I just wish that they would make the battery optimization better when the phone is, you know, idle or we're not using it, because otherwise 1% an hour, that's pretty noticeable. And it's not really me complaining because, you know, we charge our phone anyways, but it's just that like you're not really using this one here. It's not connected to any cellular data or something, so it's not supposed to be using any battery. But still, I'd say that it's pretty decent. It's not really that bad, but there are better DAPs, I guess. I've heard like the Hybe M300, it's like the battery optimization is just better on that. I don't have that device, but this one though, it has balanced out, so there are pros and cons. Now let's move on to the sound. It's hard to explain, or it's hard to review sound coming from sources, because it can even be placebo. But do I notice some changes? A little bit. I have to say, I really noticed some changes. This is me comparing to my Shenling M3X. I've had this for almost 3 years, and I kind of like know how it sounds. And switching from this one here, I noticed a little bit of difference, and probably the first one would be the emphasis. With my Shenling M3X, because this one here has an ESS DAC chip, I feel like this is more resolving when it comes to vocals. It's just more natural sounding. There's also a tighter bass, and treble is a little bit well extended. For the FiiO JM21, it's using the 43198 DAC from Cirrus Logic, and I've heard that DAC chip in different dongles. And as I've mentioned, there is this consistency in sound with that DAC chip, and it's just smooth. And it can be good or bad depending on your preference, because smooth can be like you lose the treble sparkle, and smooth can be like the bass can be a little bit pillowy in attack. It's not so tight sounding. However, if you have aggressive earphones, like, you know, they have boosted bass, too much bass, or too much treble, then this one here can smoothen it out a little bit, which makes your listening experience a little bit better. So there's a little bit of pros and cons depending on which earphone you want to match it, but I do feel like this is a really smooth sounding DAP. It's almost close to neutral. Maybe it's the op-amp they're using, or maybe it's just a FiiO implementation where it's a little bit unengaging at times. It's not really that boring, but this is just me comparing to my Shenling M3X, which is more engaging, more natural sounding. But of course, this has an older Android version. I'm not sure if they're still doing some updates on here. With the GM21, it's pretty much future-proof at this point when it comes to Android updates, because it's Android 13. So this is a big selling point on this DAP here. It's really the Android version and the price. Now, moving on to the comparisons, again, I can only have the Shenling M3X here, which is not really in the same price point. This is a little bit expensive here. The battery life is going to be better on the Shenling M3X, but of course, it has 3,200 capacity, right? The FiiO is going to have a better future support because of the Android version. This is faster and snappier interface-wise. The display though, I mean, like, it's not really class leading compared to phones. It's kind of like washed out comparing like even with the Shenling M3X. The Shenling M3X a little bit crisper in the image if you care about those. Man, this is a sound device, not a visual device. So for me, I don't really mind if the screen is bad or something. But maybe, I mean, if you watch YouTube videos, that might be important. Just saying that the screen might not be that really good compared to other DAPs in its price range. Compared to dongles though, I'm pretty sure some dongles would sound better if you're looking for a better sound. But you know, having a DAP, having a dedicated DAP is just really different. I mean, I bought dongles and some of them really sound good. I'm a very mobile listener, like I walk a lot, I travel a lot, and having something to dongle on my phone, it's kind of like annoying to some extent. I mean, if you're just gonna be in your home, it's probably gonna be better in that regard. Use your PC, attach a dangle in there, boom, you're fine. But if you're up and around, you're traveling, you would want a device to listen to with good connection, good connectivity, has Wi-Fi, has Bluetooth, has everything. And yeah, in its price range, under 200 bucks, this is a great device. The JM21 is under their Jade Audio sub-brand, which is, I think, focused on the budget models. But still, I think the implementation on this device is really good. They are still doing a lot of testing and updates on this, depending on user feedback. I get a lot of questions regarding which one's better. Is it the HiBi M300 or the R4 or their budget HiBi R1? The HiBi R1 is gonna be very cheap. Also, it's like under 100 bucks, but it's not Android. So I think this doesn't really have a direct competitor as of the moment because the R4 is a little bit more expensive. It's also a bit bulkier. It's probably not as travel friendly as this one here. And just a comparison, this is my Shanling M3X. So they're pretty much the same. The Shanling's pretty portable actually. This is smaller. Look at that size comparison in there. So maybe you need to check other reviews, but for me, I can recommend this really. Other than that, like there are pros and there are cons to this DAP, but it's not to the extent of me not recommending it. For its price range and with the functionality that you get with the JM21 and its price range, you can give it a try. I mean, if you can get it for cheap, I think Hi-Fi Go or some other online shops are selling it for like maybe 170 or 180, something like that. Give it a try. So the FiiO or Jade Audio JM21, is this the best in its price range? Probably not, but I think it's a bang for the buck. See you next time.